On August 21st, the Alberta Government launched a panel that will go out and talk to Albertans about nuclear power. Now, one would forgive you for being very skeptical because this government has a history of using, panels to manufacture consent. They load them up with very suspect experts and send them out to go out and supposedly consult Albertans, and then they leave only their party members, let them into the meetings, et cetera, et cetera. We all know the stories, but I don't think this is like that. One of the reasons why is because the nature of the experts, and I've interviewed 3 out of the 5 panelists. Darren Billis, who used to be an NDP cabinet minister, I think he was involved with economic development, business development, and Rudy Scherning, who is a fellow on nuclear law and policy at the University of Calgary, a sharp guy, and Harry Riedenberg, who's a professor of strategy and global management at the University of Calgary, senior analyst. Harry's top-notch. I really appreciate his insights. And the other 2, Tim Boston, who's a consultant, and Stephen Buffalo, who is the president and CEO of the Indian Resource Council of Canada. They seem to have pretty solid reputation. So I think this panel is real. The question is, what's it meant to do? This is what I don't understand. There's the usual buzzwords that Premier Danielle Smith likes to throw around when it comes to nuclear. Source of safe, reliable, emissions-free energy. Nuclear power has emerged as a viable option for growing energy needs while supporting responsible decarbonization goals. You could read this, a monkey could have written this. But it also has the potential to enhance grid reliability and affordability. Now, this is interesting because I think really what we're talking about here is not the big nuclear plants that you see in Ontario. It's more of the small modular reactors. The Alberta government's already part of a 4-province consortium that's studying SMRs. The problem is there's never been one built before, at least not in North America for sure. There have been some high-profile meltdowns by startups like NuScale down in the United States, and lots of skepticism. Now, an SMR, a small modular reactor, is meant to be manufactured in a factory in modules, and then because it's not a custom engineered, it's just modules that you bolt together. You want more power, you bolt more units together. Then that allows you to bring down the unit costs. It's kind of like the same reason that you've seen plunging costs on wind and solar. Okay, so in theory that's really good, except that we haven't got one that long on promise and short on delivery so far. However, Canada will be home shortly to the first SMR, and that's Ontario Power and Generation, OPG in Ontario, is building the first one. It's a 300 megawatt SMR, and there'll be 4 units, so 1,200 megawatts altogether when they're done. I think they've begun construction already. They've been working on this for a while, and it's expected to be in service in late 2029. The cost is $3 billion, higher than earlier estimates, which I think came in around $2 billion. I wouldn't be surprised. In fact, I'd be shocked if the final bill doesn't come in around $4 or $5 billion. It seems like every large project that gets undertaken these days runs into cost overruns and often schedule overruns. And that's certainly been the case with nuclear in the large nuclear plants, like the Vogtle plants down in Georgia, the United States. What's really interesting about this is the cost of electricity. Didn't Premier Smith talk about affordability? The cost per megawatt hour are estimated to be $115 to $135 per megawatt hour. That's really, really expensive electricity. If you're looking at wind and solar, like say solar and storage, you're probably looking at $25 to $35. Maybe in Canada it might be $40, $45 a megawatt hour. That's probably the cheapest power that you can get. And if you're looking at gas plants, then you're probably up at around $60. I think that Site C's, BC Hydro Site C dam. That's a little controversial because they've kind of played with the numbers a little bit. They've moved out the amortization period, and the longer you take to pay something, the lower the cost per unit of production becomes. So but that hydro, I've seen lots of estimates that are well over $100 a megawatt hour. Or you can be, 30 cents a megawatt. For $30 a megawatt hour if you take 100 years to pay off the asset, as BC Hydro claims. So anyway, it's not clear that this is going to be inexpensive power at all, and it's not clear. Well, it is kind of clear in a way why the Smith government wants to do this. I mean, the government's aversion to wind and solar is well known. And it had the renewables moratorium in August of 2023, the new rules last in February of 2024, and essentially kneecapped investment. I had Jason Wang from the Pembina Institute on last week, and I think we lost, Alberta's lost 11 gigawatts already of planned projects, and lots more to come. So, understand, okay, they don't want wind and solar in the grid anymore, much more than they've got already. And they like nuclear. And here's my pet theory on this. If you have a grid that's dominated by nuclear, hydro, coal, steam, some combination of all of those are big rotating mass. It's much easier to keep your grid balanced, and you have far fewer reliability issues. And engineers, that's what they've been doing for the last 125 years. Those are the kinds of power generation units that they're accustomed to. They like that. They know how to work that. Now, as soon as you bring renewables into the grid, depending on the grid, but as a rule, you need to start doing things differently. You need to bring in battery storage. You need to bring in grid-forming inverters. You need to have different types of market designs, on and on and on. You have to essentially re-engineer your grid. And there's a lot of resistance in the Alberta utilities to doing that. And they also don't like the fact that, once the wind and solar plants are built, they essentially, generate power at marginal cost of zero almost, and that when they bid into the pool, they drive the power prices down. So it makes it harder for the utilities to make money. So I'm very tempted to see this. The nuclear plant is essentially a drop-in replacement for a gas plant or a coal plant. That's the truth of it. It has the same characteristics and doesn't function the same way, but it has the same grid characteristics that the current operator, the Alberta electricity system operator, is accustomed to. So go with what you know would be the motto here. I'm not sure that's going to be enough to do this, because grids all over the world, including a ton in the United States, you'd be shocked at how many are integrating high percentages of wind and solar. It's cheap, you get it onto the grid right away. So I see the emphasis by the Smith government on nuclear not as affordability and reliability, so much as a reluctance to leave the past behind. They see nuclear as a way to preserve the way things have always been done, to avoid investing in the grid, and to protect the interests of the incumbents, the utilities, who are used to gas. And of course, we can't forget that the Premier is a big champion of Alberta gas producers. So the more gas plants you have in Alberta, the more customers you provide for those little gas producers who are in big financial trouble these days. All of this at this point is we're still talking and jawing and arguing and debating. There's nothing concrete, and there won't be till OPG gets its SMR up and running, assuming it does, and we see how it runs and what it's going to cost and so on and so forth. But this is really kind of pushing back against change, And that's not a good thing, and it's what Alberta keeps doing over and over again. It keeps saying that it's embracing change while it pushes back. I guess that's what, conservative politicians do.